Paws Big City Adventure. Once upon a time, in a cosy house on the outskirts of a bustling city, lived a playful puppy named Paws. Paws was not just any puppy. She was a bundle of joy with fluffy white fur and sparkling eyes that danced with mischief. Her world revolved around her young owner, Mia, a kind-hearted girl with a laugh as cheerful as spring. Every day, Mia and Paws played in the lush garden behind their house, chasing butterflies and playing fetch with a bright red ball. Paws' favourite game was to pounce on the butterflies that fluttered around the garden, though she never quite caught them. One sunny morning, as Mia was getting ready for school, Paws spotted a particularly beautiful butterfly. It was as if the sun itself had lent its colours to paint its wings. Without a second thought, Paws dashed after it, her tiny paws thudding against the soft earth. The butterfly led Paws on a merry chase, twirling and swirling just out of reach. Paws followed, her heart pounding with excitement, completely unaware of how far she was straying from home. The chase took Paws out of the safety of her garden and onto a narrow path that wound into the nearby woods. The butterfly, almost as if it knew Paws was following, led her further and further away. Suddenly, the butterfly flew over a fence and disappeared. Paws, too late to stop, crashed into a pile of boxes beside a parked truck. The noise startled a nearby delivery man who was busy loading packages into the back of the truck. "Whoa, little pup! What are you doing here?" He chuckled, picking Paws up. He looked around, hoping to find her owner, but the street was empty. "I can't leave you here alone," he said thoughtfully. "I'll take you with me, and we'll find out where you belong." Before Paws could realise what was happening, the delivery man had gently placed her in the front seat of his truck and started the engine. The truck rumbled to life, and they were off, heading towards the heart of the bustling city. Paws peered out of the window, her heart fluttering with both fear and excitement. The city was like nothing she had ever seen. Tall buildings stretched towards the sky, and the streets were filled with a symphony of honking cars, chattering people, and the distant sound of sirens. After what seemed like an eternity, the truck came to a halt. The delivery man, busy with his schedule, didn't notice when Paws, curious and anxious to find her way back to Mia, jumped out of the truck and into the sea of legs and feet that crowded the city sidewalks. Paws found herself lost in a labyrinth of streets and alleys, each turn taking her further away from the familiar scents and sights of home. The city was overwhelming. The noises were louder, the smells were stronger, and the people were too busy to notice a small, lost puppy. As the sun began to dip below the towering buildings, Paws' adventure turned into a desperate search for home. She wandered through the streets, her little heart pounding with a mix of fear and longing. It was then that Paws met Whiskers, a sleek, streetwise cat with a coat as black as night and eyes that glimmered with intelligence. Whiskers sat atop a high wall, watching the world with an air of nonchalance. "Lost, are you?" Whiskers called down, her voice smooth and slightly amused. Paws looked up, her eyes filled with hope. "Yes, I can't find my way home," she replied, her voice trembling. Whiskers leaped gracefully down from the wall and walked around Paws, inspecting her with a critical eye. "The city is no place for a puppy," she said. "It's full of dangers, loud cars, mean dogs, and people who don't always look where they're going. You need to find shelter before nightfall." Paws' ears drooped. She had never felt so alone and scared. "But I don't know where to go," she whimpered. Whiskers sighed. "Follow me," she said. "I know a place where you can stay for the night, but tomorrow you're on your own." Grateful for the kindness, Paws followed Whiskers through a maze of alleys and back streets. The city seemed different when seen through the eyes of someone who knew its secrets. Whiskers led Paws to a small hidden nook behind a bakery where the smell of fresh bread lingered in the air. "This is where I come when it rains," Whiskers said, her voice softening. "You can stay here tonight, but remember, the city isn't kind to the lost." Paws curled up in the nook, her mind racing with thoughts of Mia and her warm, safe home. As the moon rose high above the city, casting a soft glow on the silent streets, Paws closed her eyes and wished more than anything to be back in her garden, chasing butterflies with Mia. And so, the first night of Paws Big City Adventure came to an end, with the little puppy lost in the vastness of the city, but with a flicker of hope and an unexpected friend in Whiskers. As the first rays of the sun touched the tops of the city buildings, Paws awoke in the nook behind the bakery. The aroma of fresh bread filled the air, reminding her of the mornings at home with Mia. Determined to find her way back, she cautiously stepped out into the awakening city. The city in the morning was a different world compared to the quiet of the night. People rushed by, cars honked, and the streets buzzed with activity. Paws navigated through the crowd, her heart set on finding her way home. As the day progressed, the city's charm began to wear off on Paws. She saw the towering buildings reflecting the bright blue sky, the parks filled with laughing children, and the street vendors with their colourful displays. Despite the beauty, Paws' heart longed for the comfort of her home. As evening approached, Paws' paws grew tired, and her stomach rumbled with hunger. Just when she felt like she couldn't take another step, she heard a gentle voice. "Poor little thing, you look lost," said a woman sitting on a bench with a kind smile. The woman, Grace, was a kind soul who had lived in the city for many years. She offered Paws some of her sandwich, and as Paws ate, Grace spoke softly to her. "I know what it's like to be lost," she said. "I lost my family years ago and found a new one in the city." Paws listened, comforted by Grace's voice and her story. That night, Grace shared her blanket with Paws, offering her a place to sleep. Under the starlit sky, in the company of Grace, Paws felt a sense of peace. The next morning, inspired by Grace's kindness, Paws resumed her search. Just as she crossed the street and turned a corner, she suddenly saw a familiar-looking building. A large red brick building with flags fluttering in the wind. She remembered seeing that on her unexpected ride on the delivery truck. She started to go towards the direction she thought was back towards home. And as she walked, she started to see more building and parks, and trees she thought she remembered. She carefully picked her way, stopping and watching at crossroads for the correct way. She often smelled the air for a whisper of home, but she was too far away, and the air was unfamiliar still. She crossed busy streets, skillfully avoiding the rush of people and cars, and continued towards home, she hoped. Paws' journey was not easy. She encountered many challenges, from narrow escapes from a dog catcher who mistook her for a stray, to finding her way out of a maze-like construction site. Each obstacle she overcame made her stronger and more determined to find her way home. Just as Paws started to recognize more familiar sights, indicating she was getting closer to her neighborhood, dark clouds began to gather in the sky. A rumble of thunder echoed through the city, and soon rain started pouring down in heavy sheets. Paws pushed forward, her fur soaked, and her vision blurred by the downpour. The city streets turned into rivers, and the loud sounds of the storm were frightening. Paws struggled against the wind and the rain, her thoughts solely focused on seeing Mia and her warm, safe home again. Lost in the storm, Paws found herself standing at the edge of a swollen river. Was this the same river beside which she spent afternoons with Mia, chasing butterflies and squirrels? But that river was a small, calm stream. This is a raging torrent, blocking her path home. But Paws knew this was the same river, it smelled same. But how will she cross it? Where is the bridge the truck went over? In the torrential rain that covered every way, Paws could not see very far. Paws whimpered, feeling more lost and alone than ever. But then she heard a familiar voice. Paws! She looked behind her and saw Whiskers, drenched and dripping, but still somehow looking composed. The streetwise cat had been watching over Paws from the shadows, making sure she was safe. You can't cross here, Whiskers shouted over the roar of the storm. Follow me, I know a safer way. Paws followed Whiskers as they navigated through the rain-soaked streets. The cat led her to a stone bridge further downstream, standing strong against the current. This is it. Paws recognized the bridge. This was the one that can take her home. Paws started running, followed closely by Whiskers. Paws crossed the bridge, her heart pounding with hope and gratitude. Once they reached the other side, Paws knew she was close to home. She could smell the familiar scents of her neighborhood, and despite the storm, a wave of relief washed over her. She no longer needed to remember and follow the roads. She just needs to follow her nose now. With the storm still raging around her and the guiding presence of Whiskers at her side, Paws moved with renewed energy. She recognized the streets, the houses, and the familiar smells of her neighborhood. Her heart swelled with hope. She was almost home. As Paws and Whiskers ventured closer to Paws' home, the storm reached its peak. The wind howled, and the rain fell in torrents, making it hard for them to see. Paws, driven by the thought of seeing Mia again, pushed forward bravely. Suddenly, Whiskers stopped. Ahead, a large tree had fallen across the road, blocking their path. Paws' heart sank. It seemed like every step towards home brought a new challenge. But Whiskers was not deterred. We can get around it, she said confidently. Follow me. With Whiskers leading the way, they found a narrow path through a neighbour's garden, circumventing the obstacle. Paws and Whiskers continued their journey. As they turned the corner onto Paws Street, Paws saw a sight that filled her with joy. Her house, with its warm lights shining through the windows, a beacon in the stormy night. Paws kept running, now also barking at the top of her voice. Her voice was small against the thunder and the rain, but her joy and love seemed to carry it unhindered, for suddenly there was a familiar face in the window. An anxious face, eyes red from crying, a head full of black hair, not combed for 2 days, peering eagerly through the rain and the darkness. It was Mia. She had heard Paws. As Mia looked out, she saw a small white shape rushing through the street, and despite the mud that mottled her fur, immediately recognized Paws. Paws! She cried out. She ran and opened the door and rushed towards Paws through the heavy rain, completely ignoring it. Paws rushed into Mia's arms, wagging her tail, barking and licking Mia's face with joy. Mia's family also came out now and gathered around, hugging Paws and expressing their relief and happiness at her safe return. Whiskers watched from a distance, a satisfied smile on her face. Mia looked at Whiskers and understood. You helped her, she said gratefully. Thank you. Whiskers nodded and disappeared into the night, her mission accomplished. Paws was home, safe and sound, surrounded by the love and warmth of her family. Mia's parents dried her off, gave her warm food, and made a cosy bed for her by the fireplace. As Paws settled down, Mia sat beside her, stroking her fur. You're my brave little adventurer, Mia whispered. I'm so glad you're back. Paws looked up at Mia with loving eyes. She had ventured into the big city, faced its challenges, and found her way back home. The experience had shown her the kindness of strangers and the courage within herself. The story of Paws Big City Adventure became a cherished tale in the family. It was a story of bravery, kindness, and the unbreakable bond between a girl and her puppy. Paws never forgot Whiskers, the streetwise cat who had helped her, and sometimes, late at night, she would hear a familiar meow outside her window, a reminder of the friend she had made on her incredible journey. And so, Paws' adventure ended where it had begun, in the loving arms of her family. She had found her way back home, not just to a place, but to the hearts that had missed her, and the love that had guided her through the storm.